Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Friday evening talk on the topic of speech and silence. As a subtitle, I want to talk about listening as a gateway or doorway for liberation from suffering. So we're going to take a closer look at the activity of speech, right speech, in the context of Buddhism, and also contrast that with silence, because in Buddhism we also have a practice we call noble silence, keeping noble silence. A lot of people, especially in the West, when we go on meditation retreats, then quite often we are asked to keep noble silence, which depending on where you go and the style of the retreat, sometimes could be quite strict, and you are only allowed to communicate by writing notes. And so we're going to take a look at this tool, and then I want to touch on how listening is able to help us bridge, help us to harmonize this transition between speech and silence and back to speech. Yeah. Okay. And since we are live, I most welcome you to participate. You can post your comments, your feedback, your questions on the live chat, and I will attend to them as I present the material I have in mind, and then we'll see how. I probably will talk for a while, and then we'll do a meditation together. I really like to have a time for meditation practice, which is a time for, in the context of meditation, but we can explore our own experiences related to the topic we are discussing, and that gives some kind of maybe grounding to all the information that I might be presenting or you might be thinking about. So hopefully we can ground that and relate that to some of our own experiences. And then after that, there'll be time, if you have questions, and we can have a kind of discussion, so to speak. But not to worry, if there's nothing, I can always keep talking. The last few weeks, I have been presenting guided meditations and leading workshops over YouTube. And I was telling my friends that I'm amazed at my own ability to keep talking to the camera for 2.5 hours at one go. So don't have to worry that there will be any awkward silence on this video. Okay, so let me start by introducing speech. And in Buddhist teaching, there is a topic of right speech, or sometimes I like to call it mindful speech. Right sometimes invoke the idea, quite often, or always invoke the idea of wrong, right and wrong, and it can be very polarizing. And sometimes we might get ourselves being very caught up in a very judgmental attitude, very critical attitude towards ourselves or towards others. It's easy to judge, especially when given some criteria to judge with. And so you may find that people who come to Buddhism, new to Buddhism, or not necessarily new, but when you are equipped with a list of qualities or what's called right speech, then we might find ourselves becoming quite judgmental of ourselves or others, especially when we perceive something as wrong speech. And also that also have a flip side to it, is that we can become a little bit too uptight as we try our best to engage only in right speech. I have to confess that I'm not always mindful of my speech, and I like to joke about, because one of the wrong speech is what we call idle gossip. Although the name doesn't necessarily correspond to what it referred to. It referred to speech or conversation that tend to increase our delusion, our afflicted state of mind. It's a speech where already you are angry, and the speech that we engage in that increase that anger, that escalate the hatred. Those are a form of wrong speech, yeah. And also speech that create even greater confusion or entrench wrong understanding, wrong views. Those are what is called idle gossip. No, it's not really the fact that we are just idling. I mean, it's the fact that the speech that we engage in certain contexts are fewer, fewer our delusion, fewer friction. But and so sometimes I observe that sometimes people become very cautious, and they feel inhibited to talk because of this idea that I shouldn't engage in idle speech and idle gossip. I mean, yeah. And so I like to encourage them by giving them a different perspective. I'm just rambling on. Don't worry about it. It's not my main topic. I'm just starting off. And I like to tell people that, you see, gossip is the glue of a community. A community that doesn't gossip is a very strange kind of community. It's half of a joke, but also to encourage people to view speech among as the members of a community or of a group as something that help to bring people together. Sometimes interactions are not only to be judged on the fact that it's kind of exchange of information. Sometimes interactions are just human beings reaching out, giving and receiving. This kind of just sort of no great significant kind of conversation. For many years, while my father was alive, and he suffered certain degree of cognitive impairment, especially to his short-term memory. His short-term memory is totally unreliable. I entered into many conversations with my father in which the fact of it is just to maybe fill up the space with words, just interactions. Whatever contents of those conversations are not to be trusted, because that tends to patch up holes with whatever that comes to mind. Ask him about breakfast, lunch, and he would just make up whatever it is because he can't remember the content of his meals. And then maybe talk about other people and talk about other things. Most of the time, cannot be trusted because I always have to, if it's important, I have to double check with the staff because his memory is it's not really functioning that well, especially short-term memory. Yeah, but I find it very helpful to enter into those conversations, not as a way of gathering right information, but as a way of just fostering that connection between me and him, just as a way to show concern and to draw him out from his silence and just to have something to talk about. Literally talking about nothing at all, because there is not much truth involved. Yeah. So that is a form of speech, and speech is a very important aspect of our human life. And let's have a look at what the Buddha's advice on what I would call mindful speech, right? And so there are 5 characteristics that the Buddha invite us to pay attention to. Of course, the first and foremost is whether the speech, the content of the speech is truthful or factual. You probably will know that in Buddhism, telling lies is considered a kind of wrong speech. Deliberately and intentionally deceiving someone, especially with not a good intent, is considered a wrong form of speech. And so the converse of it, as mindful speech, is we try to be as factual as possible, try to speak the truth. Often when in Buddhist context, when we talk about actions like this, what are the virtuous actions, non-virtuous actions, then we get ourselves into a lot of hypothetical situation, or maybe not so hypothetical. People say, what about white lies? Can I tell white lies? And I try not to get too involved in that. I believe my way of looking at or understanding right action and how we make choices in our daily life in terms of what to do or what not to do. I really believe that there is no such thing as one right answer for all contexts and all situations. In fact, part of spiritual training or mindfulness training is to become more and more sensitive to the different contexts we find ourselves in, and to train our own wisdom, through observation and through trial and error, and through observing the effects of our actions, and whether is it beneficial or is it harmful. So likewise, a question like white lies, or should I always tell the truth and nothing but the truth? I think it's important to keep in mind the guidelines or the advice, but nonetheless be flexible and to explore within our own experiences, what is helpful, what is not helpful, what works, what doesn't work. Instead of trying to follow a kind of it's not like law, right? Although sometimes people do call it law of karma, but it's not really. It's not something that you can know for sure, once and for all. Instead, it's often learning in progress. Learning about our own behavior, learning about the impact of our own behavior on ourselves and others, and through those maybe making mistakes along the way, hopefully we get wiser. Yeah. So I also don't know what's the right answer, whether it's okay or not okay to tell white lies, but I think it's important where possible we try to be as factual, as truthful. It's actually not so easy. When I occasion to relate a story, to tell a story, maybe like for example in such a context or with friends, I often wonder how accurate my stories are. Because sometimes we always edit our stories. We check out all the boring part and we kept all the funny, interesting, or emotional, provoking parts. So after that, you realize, I reflect and say, I wonder how accurate my story is, to the reality of it. Maybe not. Second one is beneficial speech, and this is actually a very important criteria according to Buddha. It's not enough for what we say to be true, because sometimes the truth can be not helpful and can even be hurtful to others. So not only must we consider our speech to be truthful, but also whether is it beneficial. I think this is a very important thing. Like so often I observe people communicating with, especially those who suffer from dementia or have certain cognitive impairments, like with my father. People are so obsessed with getting it right. Sometimes I feel like telling them, it doesn't matter. Who cares what they have for lunch? Who cares whether they got it right or wrong? Or sometimes, of course, certain occasions it's important to get it right, but other occasions is beyond their ability to remember. So what's the point of correcting them? They can't remember, they can't put names to certain faces they haven't seen for a long time. So why insist that they have to get the names right? They just So if it's not beneficial, then maybe it's something we should consider. Should we talk? Should we say it, or maybe not? So truthful, beneficial. Third one is timely. When to say it and when not to say it is also important. An important consideration to consider. Maybe it's truthful and beneficial, but it's happened to be the wrong time. Then maybe it's better to just zip, and keep it for another time. Timeliness is an important one. So these are three considerations in terms of the content and the occasion of speech. And the fourth one is, how do we say it? Is it can we say we can actually say it in a way that can be hurtful or in a harsh way, or if possible, is it possible for us to say gently with affection, affectionately, in a gentle way? in a loving way, in a kind way. So the manner of way in which we express. Of course, saying that doesn't mean that we always have to be soft-spoken or whatever idea the word gently or affectionately bring up. Sometimes, of course, we do need to be firm and assertive, but the main thing is to consider and be mindful how we say it. Yeah. So that's the fourth one, gently. And the fifth one is, where does that speech come from? Is it possible for it to come from goodwill, from a good heart, as opposed to one of sometimes we speak, but the speech is more self-serving as opposed to wishing to benefit others. Yeah, that speech might be a way of boosting my ego. No, so it's probably not from a good place, not from goodwill. Yeah. Or we may speak it with a clear intention to hurt, to cause harm, to retaliate, which is, I have to say, it's really easy for us to slip into it. So is it possible for the speech to come from a good place, from a good heart, or with goodwill? So those are the 5 characteristics of mindful speech or right speech. Just truthfulness, factual, beneficial, timely, gently, and with goodwill. Right. So not to worry. Usually I tell people, don't worry if you cannot remember 5. Maybe just try to remember 1. And when we put it into action, and now and then when we do remember what we are talking, where we engage in speech in the modern world, not necessarily just verbal. All this texting, all this emailing, and all sorts of different means through which we communicate come under this topic of speech. Yeah. Is it possible to at least remember 1 and then to test it out to see whether what is actually involved, like for example, in timely speech, or what qualifies as beneficial speech, or what does it mean, to speak or to say in a gentle way with affection, and what does it mean what is the difference coming from speech coming from good hearts and one coming from one of our obsession, like maybe with to be right. Sometimes we find that we might be more concerned about being right than to being helpful or beneficial. Right. So speech is a big, broad topic. What about the opposite of speech? Silence. Silence is even more interesting, especially in a spiritual context. I have a bad habit, and I did it purposely when my retreat, workshop, one day, multiple days, workshop or retreat. I call it a bad habit, but I did it purposely. I don't require people to keep silence. And for many occasions, this come across to a lot of people as quite a surprise, which also means that they have an expectation in their mind when they come for a meditation retreat, that they expect a requirement on them to keep silence or to maintain what we call noble silence. I'm not so sure whether it's really noble or not, but to keep silence. And often we have a tag to tell people, I am in silence. Yeah. And so I did it purposely because I observe, this is just from my own experience, I observed that there's everything about silence which I thought to share in this context and maybe draw your attention to. Silence is very powerful. Yeah, and it's more powerful precisely because in our modern living, our modern lifestyle, it's so rare in a way to be in silence. Maybe now during this period, during the lockdown, we find more occasions where, if you're living alone, there's no one to talk to, of course, which is why a lot of communications went online. Yeah, like for example in this context. Yeah, but especially in a meditation retreat context, silence become hidden because a lot of people find silence very helpful. Help them to calm their mind down, help them to have what we call good meditation experiences. And silence is, I have to admit, a very powerful condition in the context, for example, meditation. It really cuts out a lot of distraction. Human speech is actually a very distracting thing. Yeah, we are predisposed to focus on human speech in meditation, especially. You will find that when you're meditating, and there are different kind of sound, but among all the different sounds, if someone starts talking, it's very difficult for us to kind of pull back from it. Our attention is drawn towards it. And also, of course, the more we talk, the more we fuel the inner chattering of the mind. And so a lot of us may find the fact that we can keep silence help in that aspect. Yeah. So there is definitely great benefits for us to maintain silence, especially on a meditation retreat. But the reason why I choose not to ask people, I don't stop people from keeping silence. I just don't ask them or don't demand them to be in silence, is because silence is a double-edged sword in that context. Silence is when we are asked to keep silence, in a strict way, it cut off one of the major source of distraction that we find ourselves engaged in, which is talking. You see, when you feel bad, it's so wonderful to have a chance to talk, to vent, and just talking. It helps to pass time anyway. Yeah. So when you're not allowed to talk or you can't talk, suddenly all those energy that we used to express or let out through speech, they can't go out. They sort of can tap in. And so silence in a meditation retreat become like, I usually compare it to like a pressure cooker, because what happens is the silence kept in a lot of the energy that we either vent or we waste, you can say, through talking. And so it quickly and easily transforms your meditation retreat into what I like to jokingly describe as a pressure cooker situation. As you know, most of you have used pressure cooker. It really helps to cook food quicker, faster, and maybe really tenderize them, because of the increased pressure. Okay, increased pressure, and that serves certain purpose, right? Because we would like our meditation retreat to be powerful, effective, and it's give us like food, something really tasty and wonderful, and as quickly as possible in a very busy modern living. Yeah. But of course, I don't know whether have you ever seen a pressure cooker explode. It's quite spectacular. I missed one when I first moved to Sydney to Vajrayana Institute. We were living in Newtown. And one day when I came back to where the center is the house, my housemate told me that, I just missed it. If I got back 1 hour earlier, I would be able to witness the explosion of the pressure cooker. And I think they're cooking dal, lentils, and the lentils were everywhere in the kitchen, including the ceiling. I said, that's a real bummer. It would be real sight to not to be with. Not in the kitchen, it can kill you, but to witness how spectacular it is to cook under pressure when that went out of control, when the safety valve failed, when the pressure went beyond what the vessel can sustain, and then that's what you end up with, a big mess. Yeah. And also because I work as a research chemist for a while, I studied chemistry. I mastered in chemistry, and the chemistry, the kind of research that I did is particularly sensitive to pressure. We did a lot of things under vacuum. We did a lot of things under positive pressure, and things go most of the time. Yeah, and so I developed a kind of a bit of ultra sensitivity towards the presence or absence of pressure, and I don't like that kind of pressure cooker situation. Although it is very quick, it's very powerful. It brings forth spectacular, experiences in the meditation context. But there's a big challenge to integrate that into our daily life, and also it reveals fault lines that we may not be aware of, and sometimes it is too much pressure, and the result can be, instead of being spectacular, can be quite tragic. Because we get pushed over the edge and we are overwhelmed by what comes forth, be it positive or be it pleasant or unpleasant. It's just too much. We're not ready to handle them. And so I see silence, especially in a meditation retreat context, as very powerful, but a bit too powerful. And therefore, I choose not to insist on people keeping silent. If you, on your own accord, choose to keep quiet, not interact, not engage in talking, that is perfectly fine. But I don't want it to be like a blanket condition. I want, in a way, I want to soften the retreat conditions. I want to create retreat conditions that are suitable, favorable, but not too different from our daily life. And there's also another thing that I noticed, is transition from daily living to retreat situation, and then on the other end of this, from the retreat back to daily life. And so often I heard people talk about how they have such a wonderful retreat, but at the end of it, it's such a shock to go back to daily life. In the modern world, of course, going back to daily life after retreat usually lands you in the airport because we travel. Yeah. And so going from a complete silent retreat straight back to the local airport is a big shock to the system. And this kind of rapid, drastic transition is what I want to avoid, and what I want to sort of bring people attention to. It's not necessarily the best way to, or not the only way to do things. In Tibetan Buddhist teaching, we are advised when we go into retreat, and the way we conduct a retreat, in terms of the intensity, should look like a grain of rice, so to speak. Let's say basmati, right? So it starts off very narrow at both ends, and it sort of increases, and then in the middle there is this kind of, the length of it, which is quite kind of like a plateau like that. So we are advised that our retreat intensity should reflect something similar. We should start very, just like our normal life, and just ease our way in, slowly increasing the intensity. And in the case of meditation, the duration of each session, so that we adjust to a different lifestyle, living condition. Going from a very busy work life or family life to one in which you devote most of your time during the day to meditative practice. So we need to ease our way in. And then in the mid, as we enter into the bulk of the retreat, then we can sustain that level of intensity. But way before we finish the retreat, we should deliberately, consciously start to reduce the intensity. We should start to introduce in what we will consider distraction, activities that we normally perform, but which we put aside during our retreat. We should start to reintroduce them in. And as a way of decreasing the intensity, reduce the length of the seat, start to vary the kind of activities we engage in, and in particular, we can start talking. So that by the time the retreat finishes, it goes back to not exactly the same, but almost like how you would behave in your daily life. And if you conduct a retreat in this way, you'll find that leaving the retreat center and arriving at the airport is no longer a shock. It's not a shock. In fact, it will afford you the opportunity to bring the insights you gain during your meditative retreats into your daily life, right at the airport. Right there, the Dharma teaching continues as you observe yourself, observe others, interaction, very normal daily interaction, and yet with the insights and the clarity that comes from our meditation, it can afford us, it become like a learning experience, as we transition from meditation retreat back to our daily living. Okay, so this is a little bit of, I know I'm rambling on and on about silence. Yeah. And so between speech and silence, is it possible for us to be able to balance them in a very skillful way, in a very responsive way, instead of following a very fixed kind of rules or guideline? Is it possible for us to do it organically? Like, for example, when there's occasion require us to talk, to engage, to interact, we are freely able to respond with speech, with mindful speech, with those 5 qualities: truthfulness, beneficial, timely, gently, and coming from a good place within our own hearts. Yeah. And when the occasion needed, things shift, then we can easily allow ourselves to enter into silence and abide within the silence and be able to enjoy the benefit that come from this silence. And this fluid transition from one phase to another, from one activity to another, is a skill that actually we really need to learn and learn to do, because otherwise things can become very mechanical. Yeah. So that is external, like speech, talking, and keeping silence. But there is also an internal analogy between thinking and not thinking. And I think I would like to draw your attention to that, because similar things kind of happen also. In daily life, we may find that it varies from one person to another. Yeah. There are many occasions we need to think. Thinking is very important. It's a very powerful function of our human mind. And it's precisely because our thinking abilities that allow us to accomplish so much, to make so much positive changes, of course, also the negative changes. So there's thinking, and then there's also occasion where wouldn't be nice to let go of all those thoughts, that we can allow the mind to quiet down, to settle into inner silence, isn't it? So again, is it possible, instead of labeling one thing as good and another one as bad, to be able to see these 2 different phases, these 2 different activities as something that can harmoniously support one another, and that we can fluidly and in a very responsive way transition from one into another and then back again, just depending on the needs of the context. Because again, back to meditation. So often when people come for meditation class, their one and only aim is to stop thinking, which is, I often say, not a good thing to aim for. What might be helpful is learning how to transition between thinking more and thinking less, and occasionally, when the conditions are right, we can settle into states free of thoughts, but not so much as a reaction to, of course, due to the stress. So stress quite often expresses itself in the form of worries or concerns and compulsive ruminating, thinking on and on and on, which is very distressing, of course. Yeah. But then to immediately flip and say, oh, what I want to do is just to switch off, stop all thinking, may not be such a helpful thing. It's very extreme, very drastic, but also not helpful, because what it does is we view the thinking that we noticed. I want to get rid of it. I just want it to stop. Yeah. But not realizing that actually it does serve certain functions, and that at certain times and certain period of our life, this is precisely what is needed. This is what is helpful. Of course, sometimes we may overdo it a bit, and it becomes dysfunctional. But that doesn't mean that all thinking is necessarily bad. Yeah. Instead, what we need to develop is a skill in which we can evaluate, and then we can also make changes, transitions. Yeah. But that inner silence is not something. It's something that happens organically, naturally, just through the gathering of conditions. It's not something like a flip, then the thinking will stop, and a flip the other way, the thinking will start. It's wonderful. Sometimes if you flip stop thinking, you never get you won't be able to thinking. So it's wonderful we don't have that kind to not view thinking and thought as our enemies. And for me to, I'm not so much thinking of listening in terms of what we taught, maybe in counseling context, what an act of mindfulness, a way of paying attention. And there's certain special feature involved in listening that can be very helpful. And listening, learning to listen with mindfulness, with awareness, is beneficial both to our speech, because it allows us to non-verbal cues, and also we can hear ourselves better. Not only can we hear the words we express, the speech, but we can also hear, if we really pay attention to the intentions, the kind of thoughts that come before speech or behind our speech. And it's a way for us to also understand ourselves better and understand another better. And listening is also relevant to silence. When external speech stops, when inner thoughts subside, then what is present in that moment is listening. It's awareness. And that is when we can truly be present and be aware. So I think listening is very relevant to the topic of speech and silence. And I personally also think that listening provides us with an avenue to contact and to become aware of a deeper level of truth, one that can from all the delusions, from all the afflictive emotions, and help us find peace, right? Which is what I would like to present in the rest of today's session, and also maybe to do a meditation on listening together. And listening among all our physical senses has a special quality to it. There's a certain spaciousness to our listening awareness. And that's what I would like to touch on and like to draw your attention to. When we listen, in order to listen well, we have to quiet down. Probably we need to stop talking. We need to quiet down, and we need to open our awareness to let in the sound so that we can listen. Yeah. So, and sound come to us vibrating, reverberating through space. So immediately, once we start to listen, there is a spacious quality to our listening awareness. It's almost like our awareness expand and become filling up the space, and within the space, or sometimes I call it the listening space, then we become aware of different sound that is near or far, sounds that are pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. But nonetheless, the different sounds appear and are known within our listening space. And this is something that happens very naturally without any effort on our part. And this is a very spacious kind of awareness, one that is less constricted and less involved with tension and tightness, which is not the same as seeing. Seeing, you may find that seeing is very directed, of course. We direct our eyes, our attention, and sometimes, in order to see better, we might find that we tend to tense up the muscles around the eyes. So seeing, in a way, can be associated with this tension, and it's also a way associated with the narrowing down of our awareness. And with listening, maybe we can achieve the opposite, the opening up, be more present, be more spacious, be more receptive. And also, the wonderful thing about listening is there's no muscles involved. Although sometimes people do end up tensing their head, Even there's no muscle involved with our ears. We can't tighten in order to listen better. And so that is, I think that's wonderful that we can bring a certain quality, of a relaxed quality into our listening, into our awareness. And this is what I'm trying to achieve, when we do meditation on listening. There's this kind of present, spacious awareness that I like people to be able to find within their own direct experience, and to bring that same quality into meditation and into our daily life, so that like in the daily life, when not all the time, I'm not talking about some kind of perfect state of awareness, but on certain occasion where it's important to be able to listen well. Someone is trying to tell you something important, then maybe we can shift into this listening mode, this listening space, and be present and aware, and open and receptive to be able to receive not just the verbal information, but a lot of the other messages that's coming through, in that encounter. And in a meditative context, this very open, spacious awareness is also the thing that I would like to bring into our meditation experience, so that not only are we aware of sound, but the same quality of awareness can then be extended, and we become aware of our body, our bodily sensations. We become aware of feelings. It's almost like on top of listening to sound, I also listen to my body, what my body is trying to tell me, in all the changing tactile sensation of tensing, releasing, hardening, softening, heaviness, lightness. Listen to the body, listen to my feelings. Sometimes in the midst of our busyness, we are not so in touch with feelings. Pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings. Maybe there's something there that need our listening, need our awareness. Listen to our mind, becoming aware of what is happening inside our mind, what is going on inside our mind. What sort of thoughts are flowing through our mind? What sort of stories am I telling myself or repeating to myself? And finally, through listening, through this awareness, maybe we can come in touch with what usually it's called Dharma. We can call it the nature of things, to become more aware of the true nature of our nature, to benefit us. Right? So I think that's enough for me talking, rambling on. I would like to do a meditation together, invite you to join me in this guided meditation, and to explore listening, and how we can bring that same quality of listening into our meditative experience. And we are aiming to be able to abide in meditation as a listening space, as a spacious awareness, or sometimes I call it our aware space. A space because it doesn't obstruct, it is very open, it's very receptive, allowing the different experiences to come to us, and it's aware in the sense that we are present, we are alert, and we know. So to be that aware space. And through that, we can learn a lot about ourselves, about our own habits, and about how we can go from a place of suffering to a place of happiness and peace. So I'm going to start. Let me just describe how I normally do this meditation. So first, I invite you to settle into your posture, and then I will ring the bell a few times, pause, and then I'll ring it a few more times, just to get you started, get you to shift into a more listening mode. First, listening to the sound coming through. Could be the sound of the bell, my voice, whatever ambient sounds you have over at your side. Listening. And then I invite you to bring the same quality of listening, which is very open, spacious, receptive, and listen to the body in meditation. reconnecting, as I normally say, attention with the body, and which is a way of helping our body and mind to shift gear and to settle into meditation. But in this case, emphasizing what is helpful is listening, allowing us to listen to the body, listen to the different, the tactile sensation, the tensing, the releasing. And then having done that, having helped body and mind to transition to settle, and to invite you and us to abide for the rest of the meditation, just as this listening space, this very spacious awareness. And if that's too difficult, we can especially listen, as in pay attention to the changing sensations of the breath as the support. If otherwise, it might be a bit too confusing. But if you are all right, you can just be here in this moment and just be this very open listening awareness, and allow the different experiences to come and go, and see whether this might not be another way to meditate. And personally, I find it quite a relaxing way of meditating, quite an effortless way of meditating, and to contacting awareness, what we already have. Okay, so let's do a meditation. Take a few moments, adjust your posture. Find a comfortable, suitable meditation posture. Could be sitting on a chair like what I'm doing, or sitting on the floor on a cushion. If you are sitting, try to have the back upright in a natural way. You don't have to tense up our back muscles in any particular way to so-called straighten the back. Just move the upper body and just find a comfortable position for your spine to rest in. You are also most welcome to lie down on your back. If you do, lie on a firm but comfortable surface. If you're on a floor, maybe on a rug, on a yoga mat, or on a firm bed, whatever. And try to make sure that the back of the spine is straight if you're lying on your back. And that especially the neck and your lower back, there are no unnecessary pain or tension. Might be helpful to make some adjustments, put something under your head to relieve the pain in your neck. Maybe put a cushion under your knees to elevate them if you're lying down. And that usually helps to relieve the tension in the pulling on your lower back. Feel free to close your eyes completely in this listening meditation, or otherwise you can do whatever you want with your eyes. Rest your arms and hands on the supports in such a way that you are able to allow your shoulders to be relaxed. So take a few moments, allow the body to find its way into your meditation posture. And I'm going to ring the bell 3 times, and then I'm going to pause for about a minute and ring 3 times again. And I invite you during this period of time to bring your attention to listening to the sounds of the bell and to other ambient sounds in your environment, and see if you can become acquainted with the open, spacious, receptive awareness that we call listening. Rest in the listening awareness and allow sounds to come to you across space, reverberating, and allow them to just appear within your listening space, within your aware space. So see if we can first become such a listening space, such an aware space, becoming aware of different kind of sounds reverberating within a larger space. And within that aware space, you will find that not only will you know sounds, but within that aware space, you might also notice the different bodily sensations. Areas of the body that may feel tight, tense, or uncomfortable, or conversely, parts of the body that may feel quite comfortable, at ease, relaxed. See if you can not only let in sounds into your aware space, but let in the different bodily sensations from the different parts of your body. Notice whether there is any tension or tightness in the area of your face. Listen, be aware. Are you tensing up the muscles of your forehead? Are you tightening the muscles of your jaw? Or tensing up the muscles around your eyes? And if you are, see if you can, given that we have more conscious control over the facial muscles, allow some of those tensions to go. Allow the muscles to relax so that you can let in a feeling of softness into your own face, a feeling of ease and comfort. So I invite you to return your attention, your listening attention to here and now. Be open to the sounds in your surrounding or the absence of sound. And likewise be aware of the changing bodily sensations in the different parts of your body. So coming back here and now, listening, are you aware of sensations at the crown of your head? Subtle sensations, maybe of tingling, or pressure, or warmth, or coolness, or maybe nothing at all, complete silence, so to speak. How about the rest of the head, the sides of the head, the back of the head, and inside the head? Coming back to here and now, listening, can you tune into the sensations, just like sounds, to appear to your awareness, to appear within your aware space? And then moving on, is it possible to listen, to attend, to inquire into how your shoulders are feeling today? Listening is like paying attention, and we can do that gently from a good place of our heart, expressing care and concern. Notice how your shoulders are feeling. Notice areas of tension and tightness or discomfort. See if we can acknowledge that and allow it to be for the moment. Coming back here and now, listen and attend and allow the different sensations in both arms to come into awareness. Be aware of sensations at the level of the skin, or could be in the muscles, could be at the joints, down the whole length of the arm, from the upper arms, past the elbows, the forearms, and all the way to the hands. Notice sensations at the hands, the warmth or coolness of the hands, the touch at the skin, including sensations in the fingers all the way to the fingertips. And how about sensations at the chest? Is it possible to allow those sensations to come into awareness? Sensations may be associated with the movements of the chest due to breathing. And maybe we can even hear the beating of our own heart. So we listen not only to the obvious, to the so-called front of the body, but maybe we can also attend and notice sensations at the back of the body. And how about sensations at the abdomen? Sensations not only at the surface, but also coming through from within the abdominal cavity, from the various organs here. And also we can listen and see if we can be aware of sensations at the back, sensations at the lower back, coming back here now, maintaining a listening, open awareness, instead of narrowing down, focusing. We simply be present here in this moment and allow the different sounds, the different physical sensations to appear and be known within our listening space. And now we arrive at the pelvis. So can we allow the different sensations at the pelvic area to appear within our listening space? Notice in particular the weight of the pelvis resting on our seat or cushion or mat. And see if we can mentally give permission to allow the pelvis, that weight, to rest comfortably on its support. Coming back here and now, is it possible to listen and tune into the sensations in both legs, starting at the hips, just noticing without much effort at all, from the hips all the way down to the knees, simple sensations, just like the simple sounds surrounding us. Sensations from the knees all the way to the ankles, and eventually sensations in both feet, including the toes, appearing within our listening space, our aware space. Allowing the sensations of both legs to come into awareness. And as we become aware of them, is it possible to release the weight of both legs, allow them to rest comfortably on the floor, on their supports. So now we allow our body to continue to rest, to settle into the posture, surrendering, releasing unnecessary tensions as it settle into the meditation posture. And can we rest our mind, our attention as a listening space, as an aware space, here and now? Invite our attention to come back here and now. If we do get distracted, if we do get caught up in thinking, remembering, fantasizing, not a problem. Just invite attention to come back, to open up and listen. Coming back here and now, we can transform the sounds in our surrounding, which normally we might regard as a distraction and irritation. Now we can see all those sounds as a reminder, calling us to step out of our thoughts or fantasy or judgments, to come back here and now, to be present and to just be a listening space, an aware space. So resting our attention in the present moment as a listening awareness, as an aware space. When thoughts arise, is it possible for us to listen to our own thoughts, give attention to the different self-talk that we might find ourselves engaged in? We may notice ourselves telling different stories or commenting on different things. And is it possible to simply listen to those thoughts? And if we do get carried away, we do get caught up in the train of thoughts, when we recognize it, see if we can simply step back, step out of it, come back here and now, and once again, simply be that listening space, that aware space. Resting in this moment, and when we do get distracted, invite attention to come back here and now. See if we can transform the sounds in our surrounding, the sounds coming from even within our own body. Sounds become a reminder, a call to us to come back here and now, to abide here as a listening awareness, as an aware space. Without any effort on our part, we become aware of sounds, bodily sensations, thoughts, images, memories. Things come and go within our aware space. See if you can rest, be comfortable, and allow yourself to just settle here and now, doing as little thing as possible, and maybe even doing almost nothing. Simply be here and listen. So I'm going to keep quiet for the last few minutes and allow you to enjoy being here as an aware space, as a listening space. So feel free to, if you have some comments or questions, please write them on the live chat. Yeah. So while you do that, or not do that, I just want to sort of conclude a little bit. In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is not so much in the tradition that I studied, but in the Nyingma tradition, there is a practice of reading out from this very famous book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is not really its name. Its true name is Bar.do, which means achieving liberation in the intermediate state through listening. And it's a tradition that after someone passed away for 49 days, after that, regardless of whether the body is still there or not, or has been cremated and so on, there's a practice of inviting someone who is familiar with the text to read it out loud. And it's sort of segmented into 49 different sections. And by reading out, it's like talking to the deceased. What this has to do with the Buddhist idea of afterlife, how after death, then we enter into a state that is called intermediate states, or Bar.do in Tibetan, as is famously known, before we found a new rebirth. And during this in-between states, which is a state of confusion, of loss, of disorientation, how someone reading out, say hi, call your name, like telling you, reminding you that your life is over. Now you are once again in transit, and reminding you to be aware, not to fall back on old habits or take the easy way out. That at different point in that so-called journey, when different experiences arise, inviting you to be mindful and to make wise choices. Go towards the bright lights. Don't try to escape into the dimmer lights, so to speak. Yeah. And so, in so doing, the aim of this ritual is hopefully to be able to guide you to a good rebirth, one that allows you to continue your spiritual journey. So that's why it's called liberation through listening. But I think putting aside the whole idea of afterlife, after death, and focus here and now while we are still alive, while we have possession of our own senses, our faculties, when we are able to stay awake, alert, we can implement something similar through listening, and we can pay attention and be mindful how we pay attention. Listening as an analogy of mindful awareness that we can exercise while we are in conversations, and it can transform our speech because we are more attentive, and also we can exercise when we are in silence, and we can really listen and be aware. And more importantly, personally, I find listening in this way, as I was describing as we meditate on, can hold the key for us to discover a deeper truth that is actually always present, that most of the time we overlook and we are unaware. And through adopting and abiding as a listening awareness or as an aware space, we can actually directly experience it. And what is this truth? The truth is that saying that in our daily life, we build up a habit of interpreting or projecting onto our moment-to-moment experience a framework that is, of course, expressed in our language as well, a dualistic framework in which we have, like in a sentence, we have the subject I, we have the object, let's say, the mark, and in this case, through sense, to the eyes, I see the mark. So it's like saying a single experience of seeing is then divided up, fragmented in, because we impose this framework of a subject, a verb, and an object. And in so doing, the subject is split from the object. There is a kind of distance, not just physical distance, but a kind of mental and emotional distance is imposed on our experience. And because there is that distance, the sense that there is I here, there's object out there, and in that space, the distance arises all our wanting to possess, to hold on to make it mine, or if it's something unpleasant, to get rid of, to destroy. Both attachment and aversion arise out of it. Likewise, through listening, there are a single whole experience of being present and listening is split into three parts or two parts, depending on how you say. There's I, the listener, there's sound, the object, and there's an act that seems required to join these two together, called listening or hearing. And likewise with the body, there's the bodily sensations, there's I, the experience, which is somehow separate from my experience of the body, and therefore need to be somehow joined to it through sensing or feeling. And likewise with thoughts, we have this strong sense that there is an I separate from the thought. The thinker is here, and the thinker is thinking the thoughts. Yeah, a bit complicated, isn't it? And the deeper truth that we might discover through mindfulness awareness practice, for example, what I'm just illustrating, is actually moment to moment. The reality is not like this. The reality is free of these divisions, these separations. It's one single thing in which there is no separate, independent thinker, experiencer, seer, listener sitting here, and with objects scattered around, and that we need to constantly try to hold on or cling to, or objects that we're constantly trying to push away and get rid of. So through listening and through meditating with as this listening space and aware space, I believe it is possible to discover the teaching and directly experience what in Buddhist teaching we call emptiness and selflessness. And it's not really something, it's actually something quite accessible, not something very deep in mud or whatever. And it's just a matter of learning to shift the perspective, and what has been obscured and hidden and that we are unaware of can be revealed and be directly experienced. And through such an experience, it can help to liberate us from our old habits of clinging, grasping, or pushing away, of aversion, of hating, and also being confused about things. Yeah. So that is what I have in mind, and this talk is just as like a bit of an introduction, highlighting speech and silence, and how maybe with listening can help us to bridge these two and help us to have a kind of more fluid transition, organic transition between speech and silence. And both of them can be equally helpful to our spiritual practice, to our meditation practice. Okay, so that is roughly all I have to say. Well, thank you very much for the positive feedback that people have written. This Sunday, I will be guiding a half-day workshop starting at 10:30. And in that workshop, I'll talk less, and we'll do more, quite a few guided meditation. And we will explore this idea that at the end I was presenting, how listening can be very liberating as well. How through learning to listen, we can learn to, through meditation, to be present here and now as a very spacious awareness, or I prefer to call it as an aware space. And through learning to abide as an aware space from our own direct experience, we might be able to come to recognize this deeper truth of selflessness and emptiness. And through that, maybe we can find a way to set ourselves free from our old habits of attachment and aversion, of clinging and craving, and in so doing, be able to, in this life, don't have to wait until we are dead, when we are alive, to get a taste of what it might be like, what the Buddha maybe has been teaching about, about the peace, the state of cessation of all the craving and clinging. And I sincerely do believe that it is possible. And the other benefit is, I hope you might experience it just now, it's quite effortless. Because after all, listening, what really can you do, to listen better, other than to just, try to quiet down and do less and less until you're almost doing nothing, and just to be here. And I like this idea that you simply cannot tense up anything in order to make it better, because we do have a tendency to, when we want to, maybe we try to make it more perfect, and we want to somehow work harder at it. There's a tendency to squeeze and to tighten the muscles, to tense up, and to somehow strive harder. And listening offer excellent opportunity or non-opportunity for that kind of tendency. You simply cannot tense up. And so might be a good antidote to all those stress, even stress from spiritual practice. All right, anyway, I think that's it. Thank you very much for your another occasion. Right? Thank you.